right, welcome everybody. Clearwater Jazz Holidays, Young Lions Jazz Master Virtual Sessions. This is Steve Weinberger, CEO of the Clearwater Jazz Holiday Foundation, joined by two really great friends of ours. Michael Kernodle, how you doing?
Super fantastic, Steve.
And we got Frank Williams with us. He's going to take the hot seat in just a second. We appreciate everybody joining us today. And for the courtesy of the session, please remain muted, but you can use the chat feature if you have questions for either Michael or for Frank. And of course, after these sessions, the video gets archived in the studio at clearwaterjazz.com. And if you would rather listen than watch, you can check out the Young Lions Jazz Master Virtual Sessions podcast wherever you stream. Just type those words in and start listening. We appreciate everybody who's been following along with these sessions. If you have a specific topic, info@clearwaterjazz.com, and I bet we can make it happen. So thank you to all the musicians working with us to build this wonderful resource. Thank you to our sponsors, Blue Water Wealth Management at Steward Partners, Duke Energy, Marine Max Clearwater. Here we go. All right, Michael Kernodle, man, oh man. So we are so lucky to have Michael. He's a wonderful addition to the Tampa Bay music community. Big heart for education and outreach. Has been working with us more regularly recently with Clearwater Jazz Holiday Foundation, and we are so fortunate for that. Michael has agreed to serve as a host moderator for the one and only Frank Williams, who is here with us today in the studio. And whenever Frank is with us, we have no idea where we're going. So, but what we do know is it is always good, and it always gets us thinking about things from a different perspective and perhaps a new light. And that's why we love him. So 40-year plus educator, composer, author, and everything in between. I don't have enough room in this studio for his resume, and all I can tell you is that we love working with Frank, and we are so grateful to have him involved with the foundation, developing and shaping these programs that are impacting students of all ages of music, or I should say students of music of all ages, and also very young people to educate them about the history of this great music and inspire the next generation. So, Frank, I'm going to ask you to pop down in the hot seat. Michael, thank you for doing this. Take it away, guys.
Awesome. An opportunity to have a conversation with the great Mr. Frank T. Williams.
The third.
How you doing? The third. I have to add that in there to make it official.
Well, it's a pleasure. There's a fourth walking around, so we need to be very careful here.
That's right. Well, it's a pleasure to talk to you today. We have a couple of questions. I know we know you in different facets, whether it's education, musicians, you're a mentor to many. But today we're just having a conversation. Is that okay with you?
Cool, man. Let's go. Whatever road you turn down, I'll be driving. Let's go.
And I know you'll go for it. All right, here we go. So first question we have today. What was your first experience with music that made you want to make a career out of it? We know you've been teaching for many, many, many years. You retired from the school system and you continue to teach like you don't want to stop doing this. So what was it? What was that experience that you said, you know what, this is what I want to do with my life?
I had a kind of delayed love for music. I was a visual artist in my young life, and I was always an academic. Primarily math was my favorite subject. And so I joined a band in 7th grade and did not do well with it at all. Matter of fact, the lowest grades I ever had in school, I got in band, I think in 8th grade. And let's just say through a little motivation from my mother and father, I decided I needed to start practicing just to protect my body from their method of motivation. I ended up having a section leader who was not very good, and he did not learn his part in a brass ensemble. I learned it and took his place. we went to a festival, and we got a superior rating. And I went, ooh, I can do something. So I must have been just about 15 at that time. And soon after, I started hanging out with a saxophone player and his cousin, trumpet. And we were like transcribing horn parts from all the popular records that were around, R&B things, blues things, and some Cannonball Adderley and whatnot. And soon we had a drummer and a guitar player and a bass player and had a couple of singers, and we had a little band, a little teenage band. And I kind of talked a local club owner into giving us Sunday afternoon for a teenage matinee show in his club. He could sell burgers and drinks and make money at a time he wasn't making any money. He agreed. We got the door, and being on stage and playing, that excited me. And I went, yeah, I like this. And so somehow I became the leader of the band. I was doing the arranging and hiring and firing people and stuff like that at 15. And it just kept going from there. I ended up playing professional jobs later, but I think that first band and playing on stage and having people excited about what I was doing, that may have been the first bug. And understand, I had no desire to teach. I was going to play. That was it. I was going to be a performer. So that's kind of my convoluted story of how I got here.
Well, it sounds like you were very competitive at a young age, you know? I mean, being a band leader at 15, you getting your first gig, getting out there in front of your peers and probably some older people and really doing your thing. Sound like you had a good little fan base behind you. So maybe that was addictive to say, hey, I want to keep doing this. That's awesome. I never knew that was your first experience. That's awesome. And that kind of segues us into the next question about, we always hear about you are an educator, but tell us about Frank the musician. I mean, are there any standout performances, any opportunities that you had? Maybe you played with somebody special?
You just called me out for being competitive. And,
yes, you are.
I always try to hide that, but it is, I have a very competitive nature. And very early on, I started, after that first brass ensemble superior, the next year I played a solo. And it went pretty well. I think I got an excellent rating. I was very unhappy about that. And I hated that judge for many, many years as a result for not giving me that superior. But, I finally got over it. But at the banquet that year, my band director invited another trombone player named Bruce Francis, who's one of my good friends. We went to FAMU together, to come over. And he played Arthur Pryor's Bluebells of Scotland, one of the most treacherous pieces on the trombone. And, of course, as he's playing this, everybody in my band is looking at me and giving me that equal eye. You can't do that. You can't do that. You can't do that. Well, guess what? The banquet was Friday night, and on Saturday, I went to the music store and bought that piece and almost killed myself learning it. But I did learn it, and I played it the very next year and continued to go from there. So I was very, very competitive. As a matter of fact, another one of my friends, Chico, played a piece that made me feel so bad about myself that I bought that and learned it. And it took me 30 years to track him down and play it for him just to show him that I could play it too. So, yeah, I'm a pretty competitive person. You caught me.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to do, because I've seen that competitive spirit as far as from an educator and seeing you on stage with your students and man, you really strive for excellence. That's one note I've taken from you. So that is awesome to have that quality as a musician and educator. So tell me about some of the names. I mean, you don't have to name drop or anything like that, but tell me about some of your biggest performances that, you'll never forget, if it's any festivals, any stage, or any artists, you're like, wow, I'll never forget that experience.
Okay, the first one was I put together a band one summer, and with a guitar player, I'd auditioned for the Ted Mack Amateur Hour, big television show. And I got cut from the finals, and this little band from Sarasota called the Villagers, they got cut. But I made friends with the guitar player, and he and I formed a band along with his drummer, and his young brother was a keyboard player, Neil Larson. Neil Larson eventually became the band leader and keyboard player for Al Jarreau. So even at an early age, I'm hanging out with young guys who were going places in their careers. The first gig we played together with the Larson brothers was with a young soul singer named Arthur Conley, who had a song called "Do You Like Soul Music? Yeah, yeah, that's sweet soul music. Oh yeah, baby, let's get it." So that was my first professional gig. I think I must have been maybe 18 at that time. And Arthur Conley moved on soon after his protege, Otis Redding, died. And so that gig ended, and I think my next big gig was with, it was either Rufus Thomas, who played everything in E flat, I remember that, Rufus Thomas, and then with Marvin Gaye. I backed Marvin Gaye up on a couple of shows, and then I played one of the very first shows that Isaac Hayes played after he released Hot Buttered Soul. I've also played with Sammy Davis Jr. and Nat Adderley and a lot of people. I've played a lot of people on that side of things, but I also played what they call legitimate music, polite music. I was a solo euphonium player in a professional concert band, and I was the first trombone player in a small chamber orchestra that played mostly Mozart and Beethoven and things of the classical period. I played in big bands, sweet bands, beer drinking oompa bands, rock bands. One of my favorite bands in college was a rock band we called Funk Incorporated. I went on to win regional, national, and international collegiate awards. So I've been blessed with some really strong performance opportunities, and have been on stage with a lot of legends. I don't talk about that side of my life very much, but I think that all of those experiences together have made me a better educator, and most certainly has raised my standards for everything I do.
Yeah, I love the fact that you mentioned the diversity in your playing, and being an educator that still goes out and play. And I hear so many times, as far as an educator, especially a band director, any music teacher, I've heard teach with your horn in your hand, and still go out there and stay relevant in what you're doing. And it sounds like not just, funk music or jazz, you play classical as well. And that is huge. We hear jazz musicians say music for all occasions.
Right.
So I want to ask you that. What separates a jazz musician from other musicians? And not to say that we're just going to put them in a box, but, a musician that can improvise and play on the spot. What separates someone like that from just someone that only plays what's on the sheet and that's it?
That is, the improvisation is the difference. The path to becoming a great improviser requires, number one, great ear training. you play what you hear. And when you can't hear, you can't play. You can't play. Okay, how much theory you know? It helps to know theory and, scale chord application, all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, when you're standing on stage doing your thing, you are playing what you hear in your mind's ear. And you have to be able to transcribe that emotional impulse from your brain to your ear to your instrument immediately. It's called extemporaneously. And that is a very high level of thinking. I don't, criticize classical musicians for what they do, refining this one note and all that kind of thing, and getting the particular style and weighting and all of that. I do not begrudge them at all. But by the same token, I have seen classical musicians who look at jazz musicians as if we are inferior to them because they're playing more of a acceptable music. And one of my great joys was I was doing an interview with Dr. Billy Taylor many, many years ago, and he had Victor Gaskin playing bass with him. And of course, I knew Victor from when he was playing with Cannonball Adderley just a few years before. So he and I knew each other. We were talking and the whole thing. And they're on stage getting ready to play with the Erie Philharmonic Orchestra. And this bass player, who was the principal bass player, he starts vibing Victor Gaskin by bowing all of these Bach cello suites and things like that. Showing I have this training, and I have this finesse, and I have this knowledge, and I have this, and I have this, that. And I say, this is not going to go well because he doesn't know Victor. He just sees a big black guy up there who's playing pizzicato bass lines with Billy Taylor. And he's going to find out something that he is not going to ever forget. And Victor finally got tired of that harassment. And so he reached down into his little quiver and he pulled out his bow and he started playing the very same Bach cello suite that this guy was playing, only he was playing it much faster, with much better control, and with a wonderful sound in all the proper nuance and vibrato and the turns and everything. And you could have heard a pin drop in that room. Those classical musicians were absolutely shocked that a jazz musician was so well trained. Well, wake up for a minute. We have to play our instrument as well as you do in terms of manipulating the instrument. So we have to work on technique just like you, work on tone just like you, and then we have to stand and create music now. Now. And you don't have to do that. So do not look down on us because you think playing Mozart is so important. Because you know what? I'm playing Bird, and it's much harder.
That is an awesome answer to that question. And just the influence on jazz of the music of what we listen to today. You hear it everywhere. I mean, everywhere. Whether it's hip hop, rock, it has influenced at some point. You can trace it back to where we start with jazz. I mean, it's made right here in the United States, in this rich in culture. We always talk about New Orleans and in the history. I mean, it's a big impact. So let me ask you this: what do you think the current state of jazz? What do you think the current state of jazz is? And when I ask you this, I want you to give me two angles: from the performance side and also from the education side. Where are we right now as a genre in jazz?
Okay, first of all, what is jazz? This is where I get in trouble. I don't get in trouble. I just tell the truth. And I make some people uncomfortable because there are some people who would like to call jazzy music or music with a jazz influence or that has been influenced by jazz. And from the very beginning of this music, it was based on improvisation. In the very beginning, if King Oliver was playing a melody, Louis Armstrong was improvising around that melody on the second cornet. And the clarinet player was improvising around Louis Armstrong, and the trombone player was improvising around that. And the rhythm section was creating a blanket for them to groove on. So from the very beginning, this has been an improvisational music. And we have a lot of music these days that passes for jazz that is a lot more melody than improvisation. Also, every music has its legacy. If you are a trumpet player, you have practiced from the Auburn method book and the Schlossberg and all those things. If you're a clarinet player, you've practiced from the Clauset. If you're a sax player, you've practiced from the Universal Method for Sax. If you're a trombone player, you've played them on etudes. If you're a jazz player, you ought to be able to play some blues, obviously. Everybody can play the blues, but you ought to be able to play some turnarounds. You ought to be able to play some rhythm changes. You ought to be able to play some 2/5s. And if you can't do that, and you ought to be able to play some tunes, you ought to have a couple hundred tunes right now in your head you can play now in a bunch of keys. That's just what you should have if you consider yourself a jazz musician. And if you find people who fall short of that standard, then I question their jazz credentials. That's the first thing. My preference is straight ahead, swinging, acoustic jazz. There are some people who say, well, smooth jazz. Well, you know what? I don't believe jazz was ever supposed to be smooth. This comes out of a struggle. This music was created when black codes were installed, when the Klan was rolling, when we had the greatest migration of black people from the South ever. 5-6 million people moved because of, number one, the strife they had in the South, and then better opportunities up north. So this music was not created in a smooth situation. So I need to have some dissonance. I need to have some syncopation. I need to have some angularity. Then I can say, okay, they are telling the story of black history in this country. And that is what jazz does. Jazz is a reflection of our struggle in this country. And jazz has the benefit of being able to say things that we all understand, but we dare not put to word. Unless you're Billie Holiday and you make a song like Strange Fruit, and now you're in trouble. So, still, if you listen to John Coltrane's Alabama, he doesn't need any words to communicate the sadness and the melancholy that he is feeling about the murder of 4 little girls in a church in Alabama. He just called it Alabama and he played the music, and you know the communication is clear. So for me, that is what jazz is. Where are we today with that? There are a lot of people out there who are doing that work, who are committed to it. Christian Scott, Terrence Blanchard, Sean Jones. We can go on and on and on. These are some of my favorites, by the way. Going back to John Coltrane, going back to Thelonious Monk, going back to Charlie Mingus. I mean, just go on and on and on and on. This music has always had that, going back to Max Roach and protest songs and whatnot. That's what we do. There is an audience for it, but unfortunately that audience tends to be small and very select, and it tends to grow exponentially when you leave this country. You have a much bigger audience in Europe and Japan than you have in America for a lot of reasons. So that's part of the struggle. In terms of jazz education, we have a lot. This is a tough one. Do you really want to hear this? Okay.
Absolutely. And
okay, so let's figure it out.
Well, we can talk about education in general, but we talk about music education or however you want to say it.
We're going to talk about jazz education.
Let's talk about jazz education.
Jazz education. So the most prominent jazz education programs are not found in historically black colleges and universities. There, I said it. If you want to go to a real high quality jazz program, you go into Miami in this state or Florida State even, although FAMU was right across the street. You go to North Texas, now Prairie View, I can go on and on. Okay? So that is a sense of pride for me in that the larger society has embraced jazz as a worthy course of study, but it is also a source of pain that our historically black universities have not embraced it to the same degree, although it is our own creation for the most part. So that's the problem. To compound the problem, jazz is not a requirement in anybody's college. Anybody that wants to get a degree in music education can, and not ever take anything but a course maybe in jazz appreciation. They don't have to play in a jazz band or a jazz combo or learn to improvise or learn ornithology or. They can come out and be well steeped in marching band and concert band and be a music educator, which means the kids they have are probably not going to have a good jazz experience if they have any jazz experience at all. So jazz education in our public schools is spotty. There are some programs with some directors who have embraced the idea of jazz education and have learned what they needed to learn and have had experiences that give them the confidence and skills they need to teach this music. They have a love for it that works. And then the majority of our programs in public schools are led by people that don't have that, and some of them are in fact intimidated by the prospect of teaching jazz, and that becomes a problem. And that is why I have to say this to you, Mike, that is why I have been at Ruth Eckerd Hall for so long, because at least in Pinellas, the kids who want to take jazz seriously have a place to go where they can work with Frank Williams and Michael Kernodle, two people who take jazz education seriously and have the skills and knowledge and love of this music to do it the right way. So what's the situation? It's spotty. That's the situation. But there are a few oases out there, and the kids who really want it, hopefully, are close to a place where they can get to someone who has the passion to teach them this very, very beautiful music?
That's a brilliant answer, and I will agree. I've heard educators and musicians just say they're intimidated by it. They respect it, but they haven't had any experience. And when they hear an experienced band or experienced educator, they say, I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
But I would, encourage any educator that's listening to this to just reach out. I noticed that many, many great jazz educators or jazz musicians, they are always willing to help because they love this genre and they want to continue it. And I will say that was one of the biggest successes I had at Lakewood High School. I would always bring local musicians. I would bring you in, and it's a community.
Yeah.
And when the community comes together and they embrace it, they feel more comfortable. They want to go out and play. And it's a beautiful experience. So I just want to encourage anybody, if you don't have the experience, like you said, in most universities, you may never play jazz. And you could come out as a band director, never had the experience, and here you are. What are you going to do? So that is great that you mentioned that.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful art form, and I hope more of our kids embrace it. We hear about interest level now, well, they're not interested in it now because, right now they don't play live instruments. They like to play the keyboard, and there's things that they can do on a computer to make music. But I notice when you hear something with live instrumentation and people that are playing it, it's a totally different experience.
Thing. And that's just an excuse. That's an excuse. There's nothing like using the breath of life to create sound. There's nothing like feeling the vibrations in your fingers. There's nothing like you, the human being, becoming a part of the music. And when you're playing horns and things, pianos and things like that, basses, whatever, guitars, drums, the human being becomes the music. And the music works through the human being, and the instrument is just a communication device. At least that is my understanding. One of the saddest conversations I had, a great friend of mine, one of my former college roommates, had a great middle school program, straight superiors forever. And I asked him, man, I know you play alto sax in this jazz band. Why don't you have a jazz band? Oh man. When we got down to it, it was he felt more confident with his concert band than he did with his jazz band, and he was afraid of putting together a jazz band, taking them to evaluation and getting a 2 rather than a 1, and it messing up his rating profile. This is real. And I just told him, I said, look, man, here it is. I said, you're a great musician. And if you've got straight 1s with your concert band all these years, trust me, you can do it with a jazz band. I said, and if you don't, so what? I said, the bottom line is you're giving these kids an experience. And that is what this is all about. It's not about a rating. I said, and if you're really afraid of rating, go for comments only the first year. There are ways around, having that particular issue plague you. But we sometimes let the threat of failure prevent us from doing things. And at least for me, that competitive nature that you identified so early has caused me to never shy away from anything, because I have always thought that if that person can do it, I can do it too. And you know what? I'll probably do it as well or better. So there you go. I'm going to put in the time, I'm going to put in the energy and do it right. So, I challenge any person who wants to do it, And if you feel inadequate with any aspect of it, here I am. I will gladly come into anybody's band room as soon as we get past this COVID and take your kids to the next level and give them what I consider a credible jazz experience.
So you mentioned putting in the work, which that's very important, doing our research, practicing. We always talk about the work that has to be put in, the passion. But can you tell us what are some of the rewards? Or even you could talk about your personal rewards. I can say for myself, being able to travel. I'm from a small town in Virginia. I would have never thought I'd be here in Tampa Bay and, meeting all these musicians and just traveling. So what would you say is some of the greatest, rewards of putting this type of work in?
You're gonna make
I know
me
you
cry.
have a book.
You're gonna make
Relationships. It's beautiful. But tell us about what's the reward?
You're gonna make me cry.
What's the well done at the end of this journey?
At the end of the day, for me, it is to stand and finally, first of all, I never let a group sound good to my ear until it was performance time. I was always taking them apart, finding something that needed to be fixed. They never sounded good to me until I ran out of time to make it any better. So I only had one good performance, and that was always the last one. That's just my nature. But to see the journey of kids, to see those light bulbs come on, to see them sit there with smiles on their face, working together, creating this beautiful music, being a real team, being a real family, coming together as one in an ensemble, putting all of their personal this and that, their troubles, their woes, their pride, all that aside to make good music. And I've always said music is simply love set to sound. So I'm making better human beings when I have people engage in the art of making music. That's the first thing. The travel, yeah. I mean, I'm from Sarasota, Florida, and the most traveling I did as a kid was on the school bus going to football games around the state and band festivals and all that. Not everyone's going to have the blessings I have had. And I'm glad I got on these dark glasses so you can't see the tears in my eyes. I'm thinking about it, how blessed I've been. I became a pretty good trombone player at a young age. And 17, I toured South America as a member of the All-American Youth Honor Band, one of, I think, 7 trombones nationally to make it into that band. Later on, I toured the country with my punk bands at FAMU and into Canada. And then I was able to travel around the world, China, Africa, Europe. All because I had something to offer. And I think the main thing I had to offer was my love and passion for making music and for instilling that in others and for helping others to raise their standards, raise their level of awareness of possibilities of excellence in performance and the emotion that you can get from engaging in this wonderful art form. There are just so many rewards. I cannot start. I am the richest man on this planet because of the experiences I have had as a musician and a music educator. But at the end of the day, it comes down to as I have said many times, helping God's children become better human beings, instilling some pride and love in them and appreciation for beauty and teamwork and love for each other and camaraderie and all those things that come through this process we have in making music. And I've made a few musicians in the process. I've made quite a few educators in the process who are carrying this wonderful legacy forward. I don't know why I am so richly blessed. And you talk about why I continue to go out and work 10 years after retirement, do everything I do. I believe that to whom much is given, much is required. And I have been so richly blessed that I can never work hard enough, long enough, passionately enough to pay back all that I have been given. That's just the truth of my journey to this point. And of course, you know that.
Well, I thank you for really sharing that answer with us. And I always tell people, you know, I may not have gotten my PhD, but I studied closely with Frank Williams, for Mr. Frank Williams, for years. And I feel like I could be a professor in some subjects, all the experience that I've gotten. But, you know, I know as educators, sometimes people chase these trophies, you know, that's made out of plastic, but
plastic and wood.
Plastic and wood. What better of a trophy of these that's walking around, that's functioning in our community and that's doing great things? So you were one of the first people I ever met when I moved here. And you've made a huge difference in my life. And I keep hearing stories all over, everywhere I go, of your impact. So what better way to end today and just say, well done. Well done.
I ain't done yet.
You ain't done yet. So I guess that's the last question.
The best is yet to come.
What is next? What is next for Mr. Frank Williams? What is next?
Okay, so you know I have a drum corps background, right?
Absolutely.
And I'm working with a group called Our Marching Counts, and that is a group of, when I first came into the activity, drum corps activity, I was probably the only black man you could see walking around in any sort of a leadership or teaching instructional position at all. And as things went on and I continued to lead some of the most, as Mola Tour would say, gorgeous horn lines in the activity, people started to take notice. And among those who were taking notice were little black boys and girls who were marching in little drum corps. They see me walking by with Suncoast or with the Glass Band, with the cadets, and they go, "Oh, look at there." Well, guess what? Those kids have grown up now. Some of them are college professors, PhDs, some of them are teaching drum corps, all other. And we have a group called Our Marching Counts, and we're trying to do things to bring more African Americans into the activity and to open the doors of opportunity. Because even though I was a brass caption head for many years, you can't name another. And we feel very strongly that there have been many of my brothers who've come along that were qualified. And for whatever reason, some of the reasons that we know all too well, did not get those opportunities. And I'm happy to say that DCI, Drum Corps International, at the highest level, recognizes this as a problem and is working with us to increase the visibility and the influence of African Americans in the activity, because when you look at it, some of the most creative forces, although there's only been a few of us, have been African Americans like Ralph Hardeman and Jim Prime and so many others, Jimmy Elvord. So that's one of my passions, continue to move in that direction. And then every day I wake up, I want to be better at what I do than what I was yesterday. And I want to be able to help someone tomorrow more than I can help someone today. This is a journey, and it does not stop until I stop. So as long as I'm moving, the journey continues.
Well, we're going to keep on keeping on, and we want to thank you for sharing your experiences with us today. And we're going to keep looking out there, because we know we're going to keep seeing that name, Mr. Frank Williams III, around the community and the music community and throughout the world. So thank you for being transparent today and teaching us and educating us and motivating us to keep moving forward in the purpose we were designed. So thank you so much for that. I think we're going to send it back over to Mr. Steve Weinberger.
All right.
And he's going to close us out today. Thank you so much.
Can I say a couple words before I go?
Absolutely, sir.
Michael Kernodle.
Yes, sir.
First time I saw your potential. And that's why I embraced you like I did. And like me, your journey is just beginning. I have no idea how high you're going to fly. But you, my friend, are going to soar like an eagle. I'm happy to just be a small part of that journey. Have a good one.
Thank you so much, Mr. Frank Williams. This has been awesome.
Wait. How do I get in on this love fest? I mean, Frank, I talk to you every day. We're building all these beautiful programs. All right, well, we'll see what happens when I drop you off at home today.
Steve, I already gave you. You are one of the few people I can talk to about everything.
I'm giving you a hard time. Right. We are blessed to have both Michael and Frank involved, for sure, with Clearwater Jazz Holiday Education and Outreach. I hope you all have enjoyed participating today. This session will be up in the studio shortly, up at clearwaterjazz.com in the Education and Outreach section. So check out the studio. There's a lot of great musicians, both near and far, that are participating, helping to build this resource for students of all ages to reference, and it's all free. Again, the podcast, the Young Lions Jazz Master Virtual Sessions podcast, is up. And if you'd like to learn more about the Clearwater Jazz Holiday Festival tradition, which is in its 42nd year this year, in 2021, as we are talking, please go to the website, and you could also learn more about the other traditional programs that the Jazz Holiday Foundation supports with the success and growth of its events like the festival and its Wanderlust music series. So on behalf of the foundation, thanks for participating. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Frank, for being part of this, and we'll see everybody back real soon.